It is Tuesday, all you minties. That means it's time to go over some of the collected editions coming out this week from Marvel Comics. Let's get this started. Welcome back, everybody. Before getting started, a huge thank you to David Gabriel and the fine folks at Marvel for sending us advanced copies of these collected editions. All these books are due out in the direct market and book market on April 12th. And oh damn, this week is huge. This is probably one of the biggest Omni-Geddon weeks we've had in a while. Just so happens, I think, just a perfect storm of distribution, printing, and shipping all happened this week. It's insane, which is why you've seen so many videos lately of all these Omnis coming out. But here are some more collected editions, because I know I have fans of trade paperbacks and Marvel Masterworks. I cannot get to the other trades that were released this week, but hey, shout out to Spider-Girl Volume 4, because really that's what you need. That is definitely the pick of the week for a lot of us. But anyway, here are some Masterworks, an oversized hardcover to wrap up Jason Aaron's run on Thor, and an epic collection. This is the latest printing of the Avengers Defenders War. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to be looking at that Avengers Defenders War. So here we have the latest printing of Avengers. Epic Collection Volume 7, so Avengers Defenders War. Now, some of this has been collected in the Omnibus edition, but this particular volume collects issues of Avengers 115 to 128, Giant Size Avengers number 1, Defenders 8 through 11, Captain Marvel 33, and the Fantastic Four number 150. So, a lot of classic stories. Opening up with this huge, I guess this would be the very first event for Marvel. I know it predates the, Secret Wars, of course, the Contest of Champions, but this would be what would start the summer clashes or the summer events eventually. So this is kind of a prototype, because back then a lot of these crossovers didn't happen. I think we're used to so many Civil Wars or heroes clashing so often these days, whether it's Marvel or DC, that we forgot there was a time when it was a special thing for these characters to cross over. And to make it this big event, to make it a multi-part event, to cross over from one comic to another, that was just pretty much unheard of. So this is Steve Englehart writing a lot of this. This is one of my favorite stories about this, is the fight between T'Challa and Stephen Strange. Because it's all like fisticuffs, like it's brawling, there's no magic there. So yes, it's pretty much a game between Loki and Dormammu, and they pit the Avengers against the Defenders. Different parts of the world, and different Avenger fighting a different Defender. Sometimes the Defenders fighting two Avengers, and vice versa. And all the characters get involved. Like, this is the fight between Iron Man and Hawkeye. And this is at the time when he had left the Avengers, of course. The big fight, I think most people probably remember, is the fight between Thor and Hulk right here. This freaking awesome fight. The artwork in this is supplied by Sal Buscema, while the artwork in the Avengers, there we go, these particular issues right here, are mainly done by Bob Brown. And of course there's several inkers working on the book. Not only do you have Sal Buscema, you also have other inkers in here, like Dave Cockrum stepping in. So not only do you have Sal Buscema, you also have his brother, John Buscema. Now, here's the thing, like, after that big event happens, then we get the Avengers fighting the Zodiac. It's the return of the Zodiac, and the Zodiac story kind of leads into another bigger story featuring the character of Mantis. Because during this time, we had newer Avengers in the Mantis and Swordsman. So it was like this era of Avengers in love, because you had Vision and Scarlet Witch, and then you had Mantis and Swordsman in one end of the room, and there's a revelation about Mantis and where she came from, who her father is. That all ties into this big story right here featuring Thanos. And that leads into the Captain Marvel story, this is written by, there it is, Jim Starlin, but it is scripted by Steve Englehart. Jim Starlin supplying the pencils for this particular issue. So it was like one big thing after another. But the thing that I enjoyed about this, outside of the fourth wall breaking that Steve Englehart was particularly famous for, I think some people hated it, but I happen to like it. He just made his characters break the fourth wall. Anyway, that's what made this special, was that, yes, there's all these events happening. We get maybe the true origin of the Scarlet Witch, but then there's like some human side of things. You know, there's like I said, all these little soap opera type of stories happening through this particular epic collection. This book has 456 pages. Again, this is the second printing. So as always, I like to remind people that anytime there's a second printing or a reprint of an epic collection, the print runs are usually smaller than the first printings. So they go pretty quick. So if you're interested in this, I always suggest, check it out within the first week. Make sure you reserve a copy. But yeah, more than that happens in here. You have a marriage in here, and I think it's okay to talk about because this marriage was so big back then. Oh, wait, before we talk about the marriage, though, we do have Agatha Harkness now mentoring Scarlet Witch. This is where all of that begins. But we have the marriage of an Inhuman and a mutant. So, of course, I'm talking about the wedding of Crystal and Quicksilver. It also features the return of Ultron. Let's look in the back here for some extras. We have some Foom pages. Lots of Foom pages. Some original artwork back here. Foom interview with Jarvis. Some house ads. Avengers Defenders, which has been printed in so many different versions. This is a Carlos Pacheco cover. This right here is from the Marvel Premiere hardcovers. Some original pages here from Bob Brown. There's a cover by John Romita. And more pages. To Steve, best wishes, Frank Giacomo. Huh. That's courtesy of the Heritage Auctions. And then some sketches for the covers. Original pages. And then this cover original art by John Byrne. And again, this is volume 7 of the Epic Collections of Avengers. Alright, so here is Thor, volume 5 of Jason Aaron's run. So, to all things and an ending, the finale wrapping up Jason Aaron's run on Thor. Let's get this out of its dust jacket. And you have the same image by Mike Del Mundo right here, except it's not interrupted by any letters or ISBN numbers or prices. And speaking of prices, this particular oversized hardcover is $39.99. Let's get this open and talk about the stories collected in here. To all good things. Here is the finale of Jason Aaron's run on Thor. 7 years writing this character, and it all wraps up here. Now, I always put timestamps in the description of the video, so if you don't want to know anything about this, you've never read any of Jason Aaron's story, and you don't want to get spoiled, or you've read maybe up to War of the Realms, all of this, well, I'm sorry, most of this takes place after War of the Realms. So just in case, maybe jump to the next book. But if you don't care about spoilers, you just want to check out the artwork, I promise I'm not going to go over anything big spoiler-ish. But just in case, I would hate to spoil anything for anybody. So, all you brave souls that are still with me, here is Thor, Volume 5. So I've done a quick reading order on just Thor by Jason Aaron, if you want to check that out. Or a full Thor reading order. But this collects Thor 12 through 16. Keep in mind that is the 2018 series of Thor. So it shows pretty much the story going on through War of the Realms, but just the Thor stories. And then King Thor 1 through 4. So Mike Del Mundo supplying a lot of the artwork in here, but then you get just about everybody that has drawn Thor with Jason Aaron writing towards the end of this particular run with issue number 4 of King Thor. So again, I'm just going to be showcasing mainly pages towards the beginning here. This is stuff that you saw in the War of the Realms crossover. It does not contain any of the War of the Realms actual event issues. And that's something that I've been asked a lot. Like what my opinion is, if Marvel were to announce Thor by Jason Aaron Volume 2, would it collect the War of the Realms event? Would it collect just the miniseries? Because it's so crucial to Jason Aaron's run on Thor. If I was a betting man, and I sometimes do go to Vegas, I would say yes. I say I'm 99% sure. Damn, that's pretty high. Let's bring it down a notch. I'm 90% sure, just in case, that War of the Realms will be included in the Jason Aaron Thor omnibus. Kind of like the way they included the Absolute Carnage or King in Black in the Venom by Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman omnibus. Based on that, I think it will be. It just makes sense. I don't think they would leave it out. I mean, War of the Realms, the omnibus, it's a huge omnibus with all these tie-ins and all these different issues that you don't necessarily need to enjoy the story. I know completists, right? Like myself. I feel the same way about Blackest Night, for that matter. I think the main story of Blackest Night is really in the Jeff Johns Green Lantern Omnibus Volume 2. However, if you enjoyed it and you want to read more about this expanded universe, then absolutely go get the War of the Realms Omnibus, which is also coming out today. Damn, this is a big week for books. But those are just my thoughts. I'm sure it will, but let's just play it safe and say 90% sure. Hey, but as soon as I find out, you'll be the next people to know. Don't forget to smash that like button. All right, so Thor, everything that he has been building, the aftermath of War of the Realms, the finale of Thor with issue number 16 that leads into King Thor, everything that he put into the past with future, past Thor, present Thor, all of it comes back in here, including maybe some of the villains that you saw before in issues of Thor. Now, of course, I'm going through the War of the Realms right now, so all this should look familiar if you've read it. But this is the quick finale. Again, Mike Del Mundo supplying artwork. And I'll be honest, when it happens every freaking time, like, you get used to somebody. So when Esad Revik was drawing Thor, and I heard there was a guy named Russell Dodderman who was like a deviant artist, it's like, what? Dude, we already have a professional artist. We don't need somebody they found online. Come on. Damn, what a stupid thing to say, because Russell Dodderman became one of my favorite artists. And the same thing happened when Russell Dodderman left Thor to go do War of the Realms. They got this new guy named Mike Del Mundo to come in and draw Thor. And I was like, I don't know about this guy. And I ended up loving his stuff. They're all different, but they all really do fit the tones that are going through each of the stories, I think. This particular oversized hardcover has 232 pages. Now, let's look in the back here for some extras. There is a goodbye letter from the man himself, Jason Aaron, and you have this variant here of issue number 4 of Thor. By the way, some of the variants, as I'm sure you saw with the very first page that I turned to, are collected in full splash page on the opposite side of the standard cover. But this is the goodbye, like, hey, I've been doing this for 7 years, and it was really hard to let go of these characters I've been writing about for over 100 issues. And then the variants all the way back here for different issue numbers. And that is an awesome... I could have sworn that was Bagley up here, but it's Mike McCone. And this one is also Mike McCone. These are always freaky, I think. I didn't even... Okay, now that I see it, I can tell that's Adam Kubert. That's an awesome Steve Epting. And then some of Mike Del Mundo's sketches for the covers that he was going to be working on. But this wraps up the era, and then the next step is going to be the Donny Cates run. So the book has sewn binding, and it is printed at the Donley printer. Not much of an eye, but honestly it lays over really well. Spine time, baby! Here's all the spines of the books coming out this particular week from Marvel Comics. Alright, let's go back to the overviews. The Defenders. Now we are looking at Volume 8 of the Marvel Masterworks. I don't think any of this has ever been reprinted in the past. Let's get this out of the dust jacket. Remember having some essentials, and then I had a couple of the early Masterworks before getting rid of all the Masterworks, but yeah, I don't think, at least from my brain that's kind of mush right now because of all the reading I've been doing, I don't think any of the stories in here have been reprinted in the past. But I could be wrong, and by all means, let me know. There is an introduction here by the phenomenal Mary Jo Duffy, and this collects what it states there, Defenders 76 all the way to 91. And here's your introduction. And it's a beautiful introduction. I don't suggest reading it until you've read the issues inside, just because she does go over some of the stories that happen in the book. So if you don't like any spoilers, maybe don't read it. But yeah, it's 4 pages long. And then we kick it off with issue 76 of the Defenders. Now, even though I hadn't read this stuff, I knew about this, and I don't know why. So, this is where the Omega saga ends. And it was a story by Steve Gerber, who had left Marvel Comics at the time. The book got canceled. And like a lot of books in the, when was that, 1977, I think? So they decided to wrap up that story. Stephen Grant decided to wrap up that story in these 2 issues. So some of the characters from Omega came over here, like Ruth and Amber. And actually, it's funny, because Ruth and Amber end up staying with the Defenders just for a little bit. So you do have the writing in here of Steve Grant. You have David Anthony Kraft in here, who passed away last year. As a matter of fact, she mentions that in the intro. And you also have Ed Hannigan, Herb Trimpe, and Don Perlin, as well as Mike Esposito, supplying a lot of the artwork in here. And her introduction really made me think about this, because just about the stance on comics at the time and what Defenders meant to her. Felt like all the grade A heroes were going to the Avengers, and the Avengers were known, for having money, for being backed, for being super soldiers, for being gods. It's like they got all the respect, and the Defenders really didn't, and their job was just to do that, to defend the Earth against whatever threats were coming. And man, I don't know what it is, but she mentions this. I've read her introduction and Chris Claremont's introduction. It's pretty funny, because they both talk about like the progressive movement that Marvel was making at that time. And as a kid, I never even think about those things. To me, it was just taking that, yeah, a powerless mutant can be in charge of the X-Men, sure. And she happens to be a black woman, sure. And in this, reading those issues that I used to have just randomly of the Defenders, there were a lot of women in the Defenders. Half the cast were women sometimes. But it's interesting that she mentions that, and then Chris Claremont has a very similar introduction in his Marvel Masterworks of X-Men that we'll get to here in a minute. But the thing that she pointed out was things that, like this character right here. So, let me see if I can find his... Alright, so you have the character of Mandrill, who's kind of this goofy-looking character. I don't know. I never found him threatening. Besides the way that he looks, one of his powers is to hypnotize women and to make them his slave. So she goes on this whole thing about how, that was really messed up. And then what the writers and editors at the time decided to do with How to Save the Heroes and keep his women as slaves. It's interesting. She's like, you couldn't do that these days. You would have to rescue the women that were held against their will. And it shows you how creepy of a character Mandrill really was, and how far we've come. Now, this is the story here that it's kind of a long, drawn-out story, but I enjoyed it. It was the Tunnel World story, where the classic Defenders of, minus, I guess, Silver Surfer, but Doctor Strange, Namor, and the Hulk are all trapped in this other world. But this is where Black Panther decides to come in and join the team. You have the return of Nighthawk and Valkyrie. Valkyrie does end up getting her classic Asgardian costume back, too, during these particular pages. Hellcat, who plays a huge role. And then something horrible happens in the personal life of Patsy Walker right here. This one kind of took me by surprise. Kind of hit me. Just felt... It didn't feel right that happened to her. Then you have Daredevil coming in. You have the control again of Mandrill and all his ladies. Kind of a creepo, right? Like they made the Purple Man into this huge creepo in the pages of Alias. And then, of course, eventually that became what they used for the whole first season of Jessica Jones. There's a story in here with the IRS. Never thought I'd be reading about that. And there's there she was with her classic Asgardian outfit. And then you have this back here. Yeah. This is a story by Naomi Basner. And I don't think I've read anything else by her. But in the introduction, because I wanted to see what else she had written, in the introduction, this is where Joe Duffy decided to take it upon herself to talk about, this is why we had comics like The Defenders. So new people could do their baptism of fire there before they move on to the Avengers. And this is Alan Cooperberg on art right here. And this is where a lot of the editors would send new blood to go and try out just little side stories featuring these particular characters before they moved them on to bigger books. But here are some extras in the back. And, of course, the biographies back here. The book has 322 pages, and it is the Marvel Masterworks treatment. So, let's keep going. Last but not least, the book that makes me feel like an official old man, Uncanny X-Men, the Marvel Masterwork, Volume 14. This is insane. Because I remember in the 80s when these things were coming out, and I thought, man, why are you guys buying those big collected editions? You should be buying single issues like a real comic book collector. What was I thinking? Yeah, look at my world now. But anyway, here we are. We are officially at the Mutant Massacre. This is insane. Okay, so first of all, this particular collection collects Uncanny X-Men 210 to 219, Annual number 10, New Mutants Annual number 2, which that's how it kicks off actually, Fantastic Four versus the X-Men 1 through 4. So here's your introduction by Chris Claremont. Very similar to what, like I said, about Joe Duffy's introduction, about how far we've come in life and how advanced a lot of the characters that he got to write about were. And it's interesting how much love he gave to all of the creators. Not like he's not himself like talking about how great of a writer he is. He's talking about how great of an experience this was to put these stories together with these massive talented people like Alan Davis, Arthur Adams, John Romita Jr., Rick Leonardi, and just Brett Blevins, all these different artists that helped him on the book, and all the inkers, the colorists like Glynis Oliver, and the letters. Like, he was naming everybody, and I thought that was really cool. He wasn't like taking the full responsibility for making these stories great, because it was a collective effort, and he gave a lot of love to Ann Nocenti. He said it was one of the best editors that he ever worked with. I thought that was really cool, and I can see that even though they didn't agree on everything, I can see the love and admiration that he has for her. So it does kick off with this particular annual. This is going to be impossible to talk about without going over each issue, so I'm going to try my best. Let's do it. And then I'm going to do a quick comparison to the Mutant Massacre omnibus that I have. So it kicks off with the issue where Psylocke comes to America and joins the team. This is where Betsy Braddock, if you saw my overview of the Captain Britain omnibus, something horrible happens to her. This is where she is restored, and she decides to stay here in America, joining the New Mutants at first, but eventually making her way over to the X-Men. Then you have Annual number 10, which is the classic introduction of the X-Babies. But to me, this was mainly because of Arthur Adams' wonderful artwork. I love these designs of the New Mutants wearing these outfits, this like their graduation outfits, which they actually got to wear in the pages of New Mutants. I was so glad that they brought them back. But designed by, of course, Arthur Adams, who was heavily inspired by anime. And this is the introduction of Longshot to the team. Now, why Longshot was missing from the Mutant Massacre? Well, you can win yourself a no prize by answering that. Then it kicks off, my gosh, with issue 210. The story that introduces us to the Marauders. And we'll get there in a little bit, I promise. So this is in the aftermath, after the fight with Nimrod, after the X-Men have been searching for Rachel Summers, after the fight with the Hellfire Club, and Rachel is missing, and she's gone now. She feels completely, well, never mind, that's a big spoiler. Rogue is in need of a new wardrobe, so she decides to go shopping. I always liked that. I thought that was a nice human touch that, yeah, wait a minute, I don't have any time to go and get a dress, but I'm going to treat myself because I just beat the crap out of the Hellfire Club, including this crazy robot from a possible future. And this is such a just awesome moment when it comes to Nightcrawler. There's also early mentions of X Factor here, which was where Cyclops ended up going, of course, and it's pretty much the other monthly title that Chris Claremont did not want to write because he was already writing X-Men and New Mutants, and they did not want to use Sarah like he originally intended. So he decided to opt out and just stick with these two titles and let somebody else write X Factor. But here we go. The Marauders. Hi there, I'm Scalp Hunter. We're the Marauders. We kill mutants. Who's next? This issue right here in particular meant a lot to me because this is when I moved to America, and I moved here in January of 1987. I didn't know a lick of English. I had a bunch of back issues of X-Men, and I think I've told this story before that the X-Men to me were just the characters I liked. I liked looking at the pictures, and I could try to figure out what was going on. It wasn't until I came to America. By summer of 87, I was already reading and understanding things, and it was so cool. It was like missing a big chunk of my life not getting these issues. But I do remember picking this one up. It had a big tear on it. Because I think it was the last one left, and somebody left it at I can't even tell you the name of the grocery store, but it was just sitting there. And I asked my mom to get it for me, along with some groceries. And I was like, what is happening? They're killing everybody. By summer, of course, I understood what was happening when I had, not mastered the art of English, because Uncanny Omar's still trying to talk pretty one day. But eventually, I started putting these stories together. And, oh man, this issue 210 to me is so special to this day. I think I still have that copy of the original ripped cover somewhere. I replaced it eventually the older I got because I didn't want my friends making fun of me for having a ripped cover on a comic. But this introduces us to the Marauders. They are brutal. They are killing children. They are killing all of the Morlocks. And the Morlocks were these mutants whose powers were completely worthless. They couldn't join a superhero team because their powers were like turning milk into cheese or turning into a rake. Something ridiculous like that. And they were friends of the X-Men. And at this time, Storm was in charge of the Marauders and the X-Men. I'm sorry, not the Marauders, the Morlocks and the X-Men. She had fought Callisto and won against her. And she got the leadership of the Morlocks. So it was like her own people. Not just mutants, but her own people were being slaughtered by these other mutants that are coming down here. And this, to me, right here, and I'm sorry if this is a spoiler, I really don't give a crap right now, because this moment right here is one of the best moments in X-Men history. And that is pretty much, to me, to symbolize the death of innocence, which is Colossus. Colossus was the symbol of, purity and innocence from another country coming here to the United States to follow someone else's dream, and he was promised all this glamour and everything. And he was one of the most purest characters, never taken anyone's life. But when he saw his friends get just mowed down by these Marauders, man, when he takes Riptide's neck and just cracks it and breaks his neck, this is long before clones, this is long before, not that long, but there was mention of Mr. Sinister, but long before we knew about any of that. He really did kill somebody. And that was just a monumental moment to me. That still stands as one of the top 10 best X-Men moments to me. What's not in here, though, is X Factor or New Mutants. So this is an event that you can enjoy it just by reading X-Men without having to read X Factor. The first fight between Wolverine and Sabretooth is taking place in this issue right here, issue 212 and 213. Rick Leonardi supplying the artwork here. This is like the end of John Romita Jr. on the book. He moved on to do something else, and we're looking for a new artist. So for a while, it's Rick Leonardi doing some fill-in stuff. Alan Davis comes in to do some of the artwork in here. Then we get the aftermath with the issue of Malice and Dazzler, supplied artwork by Barry Windsor Smith, of course. Here's some other Alan Davises. Now we get Long Shot, and you're like, where the hell has this guy been? Get the introduction of these three creeps right here. They're ex-soldiers. They're all mutants. And they like to hunt other mutants. Just after getting rid of the marauders in that massacre, now the X-Men have to deal with these creeps. The Stonewall and Super Saber and Crimson Commando, who will eventually join the Freedom Fighters. But that's neither here nor there. Doesn't take place until later on. You get some Mark Silvestri coming in and doing some of the artwork in here. Long Shot. And all of this will lead eventually into what the Outback years are. And I can't believe we one day we're going to get the Masterworks of the Outback years. It's just nuts. Now, you all know me. I love Chris Claremont. I will apologize for all the Chris Claremont stuff that he's done. And one of the weirdest things I remember thinking all the way back here is the way that this was written. I thought this was so strange. And it is the character of Psylocke. It's pretty much Havoc. This will be the new team for a little while. You have Longshot, Storm, Psylocke, Rogue, Wolverine, Dazzler, and Magneto for a little bit before he focuses more on the New Mutants. But Havoc finds them. He finds the X-Men. And when he runs into the X-Men are like, okay, what are we going to do with him? Well, Psylocke, just completely out of character, says, why don't we use Wolverine's options and kill him? I was like, what? I thought she had been taken over by Malice, but I always thought that was so out of character. And yeah, I mean, it's not the last time we've seen that happen. I don't know if that was a choice by an editor or if that was a choice by Claremont. That's something I've always wanted to ask him, but I always wanted to ask him without him getting, mad at me for asking him. How dare I question his take on Psylocke. But anyway, also collected in here is this classic story of the X-Men versus the Fantastic Four with the secretive Reed Richards, who's kind of a jerk. The artwork in here is supplied by John Bogdanove. And this is pretty much the X-Men in the aftermath. So Nightcrawler's missing, Kitty Pryde is missing, Colossus is missing. You can find out exactly why in this particular book right here. And yeah, we are at the Mutant Massacre. That is nuts. This book has 485 pages. This one retails for $100. I forgot to mention the Defenders retails for $75. And that, as they say, is that. No, that is not as they say is that, because I promised I would do a comparison. So here we have the Marvel Masterworks, and here is the latest printing of the Marvel Mutant Massacre, or X-Men Mutant Massacre Omnibus. So right off the bat is the coloring on Scalp Hunter. This is the way I remember it in the comics more honestly than this. The color back here, that's the way that it was in the comics. And I think that's why a lot of people prefer the Masterworks than any other collection, because it's the best representation of what the comics that you remember were, even with the retouched artwork. But let's look at a couple more pages. Just very minimal differences. Honestly, the color is the big one. This is more pinkish than this red right there. Colors seem a lot more brighter in the Marvel Masterworks version than they do in the Omnibus edition. Nothing really defined on the lines here. I mean, the inks look the same. Nothing looks muddled in the original, or I'm sorry, this version here. Because this is how I would be comparing it, really, the shadows. It's usually they're muddled when it comes to restoration on a big book like this, but no, looks like they used the same kind of masters outside of whatever colors they decided to change or go back to. Or retouch, rather. So, here, let's get to issue 212 here with the big fight against Sabretooth. And not really a lot of difference. Just very, very small changes in the color, really, is what I noticed. Oh, like right here, for example. This isn't even that big of a deal to a lot of people, but I know some people really want to know these things. Like, see, like Storm's eyes right there? Whereas here, you can tell they're, those are big white eyeballs, where here, they're kind of this color of her clothing. So it's small little minute details like that whoever is touching the books up, restoring the artwork and colors, goes back and fix. And just one more page, because I had to talk about Sabretooth. So here's the fight with Sabretooth again, supplied by Rick Leonardi. And yeah, colors seem more vibrant in this copy. That's about really the only difference. Okay, now I can say that, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing any of these books, don't forget to check out our sponsor, cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. That was the content and page count of each of these collected editions. Let me know in the comments down below which ones you are picking up, if you've been following the Masterworks, or if you enjoyed the Epic collections, if this is the way you are collecting the Thor by Jason Aaron stories. And can you believe it? We are at the freaking Mutant Massacre with the Masterworks. I am officially an old man. This is like getting my AARP card. Is that what we call it? Or is it an ARP card? What do you call it? AARP, right? Anyway, leave those comments, questions down below. Smash that like button on the way out. Thank you all so much for watching. Everyone stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.